Hello and welcome. Marquita will be joining us shortly. Thank you all for coming in. And I just want to have you all introduce yourselves as you come in. If you're watching the recording, please be sure to comment as you take in the information, just as if you were here, and be sure to get in touch with Marquita. We're going to give folks about 5 minutes to join in. So as you come on in, please be sure to introduce yourself. And if you'd like to share anything about your business, go right ahead. We're here to create connections. But of course, your privacy is up to you. And you are welcome to share as much here live as you'd like. Or again, get in touch with Marquita or myself if you have any questions about Whole Heart Counseling or about Novo. Hey there, Marquita.
Hi,
How are you today?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good.
And
My video on in a minute here.
yes,
A lot of transition. There we go. So you're putting the slideshow up. It's not me.
oh, no, you go right ahead. I just wanted to have
Oh,
it
I am.
and have it kind
Okay.
of presented for folks as they came in. But now that you're here, I'd
Gotcha.
rather
Okay.
have
Gotcha. Okay.
yes,
Thank you.
of course.
Rushing home from a dental appointment.
That is life. That is life. Go ahead. And while you're getting set up, just wanted to again say hello to those of you who have joined in already today. Yes, thanks from Florida. Always like to know where you're joining in from. And Marquita is also in Florida, correct?
Yes, I'm in
Okay.
Tampa. Yep.
It is also a travel season, right? Um, so yes, joining in today. I'll be sharing ways to stay connected with Marquita throughout in the chat here. So a lot of you found it already. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll have some options. And that's a great place for you to offer any insights, questions, conversation pieces you want to add in. And we'll be looking to that throughout, but we'll also have a discussion portion towards the end that we'll be able to really dive in to anything that's sparked by what Marquita has to share today. Right. And then I also, of course, want to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie. I'm here representing Novo, and Novo is the online business banking platform that's supporting small business owners and owners of all sizes to let you know that we're here as a financial platform, as a community, and as a source for all sorts of essential elements of your business, whether that be resources for your financial management or for managing your time, productivity, or of course, managing your work life balance and mental health. So, really grateful to be able to share space with business owners like Marquita, who are really staples in their industry. Marquita is experienced with Find My Therapist as well as Whole Heart Counseling, and she'll share more about herself as we get into the presentation. But always a pleasure to connect with you, Marquita, and share space for these discussions. I want to encourage you all to take full advantage and stay connected. Before I go ahead and hand it off to Marquita, just wanted to again say that I'm here to answer any questions you have about Novo, about our creators, and about our events. And you can reach me in the chat. I'll share my information as well. Yes, neighbors. I love it.
Cheers. So, Stephanie, you're in Florida right now? Did I hear that correctly?
Oh, no, no, I'm not. That is
Oh, okay.
serving with Alexandria.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Hello, everyone. Stephanie, I always enjoy these webinars with you too. So thank you for that feedback. I um I think we can just get started. We have, I think we're getting used to this new setup. So I was trying to see where everyone's at. I have to figure out how I can see more people. Maybe that's it. Okay.
Yes, that will be your view. So you can go to a gallery view, and that will be
Mhm. Okay. Maybe other people don't have their camera on. Maybe that's why I only see you. Yeah, that could be it. Okay. So let's get started, everyone. Thank you so much for signing up for and attending Seeking Professional Help When and How to Find a Therapist. I am your presenter, Marquita Myrick, and I'm really excited about this topic because what I do in my therapy space is talk about the things that people say are not big issues, but it really is to them. And I hear a lot of feedback from people that they have a hard time finding a therapist. It is a big pain point. And so we're not going to be diving deep into diagnoses or anything today. This is really about what is the starting point. If you've been combing through pages of online directories, how do we get you to stop combing through pages and figure out how to narrow your results down so that you can get in therapy sooner? So we're going to start with our introduction, and then we're going to talk a little bit about understanding the signs you may need to consider therapy and the business impact. A lot of people in this community are business owners. Some people are working full time, and then they also have a business on the side or maybe a part-time business. And so there is a business impact to not going to therapy and seeking your healing or seeking support for the anxiety or depression you may be experiencing. Then we'll dive into what does it look like to take that first step to finding a therapist. I'll briefly discuss some different therapy approaches, and then we'll also talk about nurturing your well-being because there is this space where you're trying to find a therapist and you haven't found one yet. And so that in-between space can keep people from scheduling the appointment. You know, I talked to someone yesterday who was texting me trying to get help, and that person first texted me 3 weeks ago, can you help me find a therapist, right? And then now we're 3 weeks later, and they said, yeah, the symptoms have increased. Now it's really pressing, right? So from the time people decide I need to get into therapy, and from the time they actually start trying to find that therapist and actually schedule that appointment, there's that in between time where some nurturing is needed. So we'll talk about that too. And of course, at the end, we'll also talk about highlighting Novo and all of the special offers that they have for us as business owners. And then we'll do some Q&A and see what questions you all have. And if you've never attended a webinar with me before, I like to create safe spaces for people to heal in my practice and in the work that I do. And so when I am in a virtual space, I want to extend that to you as well. I want to create a safe space for you to open up, share your thoughts, ask your questions. You will never be shunned or shamed by me. This is a welcoming and safe space for you and everyone else attending. So if you haven't already, I don't hear any background noise, but if you could make sure you're muted throughout the presentation so everyone can just hear the content. And then please use some reactions in there. At the bottom, you should see some reactions that you can use to let us know you're appreciating the content, like it's resonating, you're still here with us, you haven't fallen asleep behind the screen. And then be prepared. Be prepared to we always talk about being prepared to raise your hand or ask your question. And as a therapist, I want to encourage you to be prepared to hear something that inspires some thought, that may inspire some action, or may cause you to question some things about your life and how you're interacting with others and how you're just flowing through life. So just be prepared to hear something that may stimulate the part of your brain that needed to hear that particular thing. And then, of course, use the chat if you have any questions. Stephanie's always really good at seeing those when they pop up. And then if you can save your questions to the Q&A section, that is best so we can get through the presentation. Please feel free to express yourself in the Q&A and in the chat. Sometimes we have people put a question, but then they have to leave later. We will still get your question answered. So when you get access to the replay, you'll notice that we still answer that question, even if you have to log off for a meeting or something. And then, of course, at the end, we would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. So please, please, please take some time out to fill out that survey for us at the end so we can know what we're doing well and what we could grow in. A little bit about me. I have been practicing therapy for 15 years now. It is my first career and it's my only career. I have enjoyed being a therapist in a variety of spaces, and I really focus on integrative psychotherapy. So pulling in different therapeutic modalities based on the individual person's needs. And some of the things I specialize in are anxiety, depression, generational trauma, phobias, and PTSD and OCD as well. So, understanding the signs that you might need therapy. If you are someone who's having persistent emotional distress, that is a big sign. Some people will just say, well, life is just stressful for us all, isn't it? And yeah, we all have stressors. And sometimes it's getting beyond just the basic stressors that everyone else is dealing with. Maybe for you, you find yourself crying at the end of the day, or maybe before you hop on a meeting, you're crying. Maybe you are not having any coping skills around you, any positive ones, that is, that are uplifting you and helping you release that stress and get that cortisol down, those cortisol levels down. And so you're tearful, you're pulling away from people in your personal or professional life. Maybe as a business owner, you used to show up online and you're not. And this isn't just, well, I'm in between with my marketing strategy, right? Which is where I'm at right now in my business. I'm in between a marketing strategy. However, I did have to understand, could this be some stress that's impacting this? Could be. Yeah, let me really assess whether or not this is a persistent type of emotional distress. This is continuing, right? Now we're starting to feel depressed. Now the anxiety is up. And maybe even if someone's watching this and they've ever dealt with childhood or a trauma from adulthood, those symptoms of PTSD start to come back. Those nightmares, those flashbacks throughout the day. Maybe you're talking to someone at brunch and they mention something that reminds you of your trauma, and it's just sitting there, and it hasn't been dealt with. It has not been addressed in therapy. And so it triggers you, right? And now all of a sudden you're wanting to leave that brunch early. Now all of a sudden you've shut down and you no longer want to tell that person about your business, even though it was a business connection. So when we talk about persistent emotional distress, this is something that's not letting up, right? It's like the tug of war, but that other side is winning. The emotional distress side is pulling you a lot harder than you can pull back with some coping skills. Which leads me to the next one, the negative coping skills. This can look like a lot of things, right? A lot of times when we say negative coping skills, people think of some sort of illegal substance, or maybe you've noticed that you're drinking too much alcohol and you're not really present for your business or for your family when you go home because you just keep drinking. It could also look like you're not setting boundaries. To me, that's a negative coping skill. You've stopped setting boundaries with people. Now the clients are running the show, right? Now people are asking you to work on Fridays when you know you have no intention of working on Fridays. Okay. And sometimes that can be something that we use, especially in the therapy field. A lot of therapists take Fridays off. I know a lot of dentists take Fridays off too, strangely enough. And so but maybe you're not coming in for emergencies. Maybe there's that one client who's found you at a weak spot because you've had that persistent emotional distress, and you keep saying, sure, I'll meet with you on a Friday to do this work, even though that's a boundary you want to keep. It actually protects your sanity. So a negative coping skill can look like pretty much anything. Anything that does not serve you. And then changes in sleep or appetite. When we start talking about that, now we're starting to look at least in the therapy field, whether or not someone might have signs of major depressive disorder or a mood disorder in general. When we talk about appetite for major depressive disorder specifically, we see that people can have a 10% increase in weight gain or a 10% decrease in weight gain. And then people will say, either I'm sleeping too much or I'm sleeping too little. So those could be some signs that that persistent emotional distress is starting to impact you on a variety of levels. It's definitely something to take inventory of, and it's definitely something that a therapist can help you with. Difficulty with relationships, and I'm not just talking about your partner, whomever your love is, right? This is also with your children or kids you caregive for, or maybe your work is caregiving. Maybe you have a caregiving business where you support adults, or maybe you provide respite for families who have teenagers who have behavioral challenges, right? Maybe you start to have difficulty in navigating those relationships, so it's personal and professional. Boundaries come up again, right? You have a difficulty saying no, difficulty communicating what your needs are, difficulty asking for help, even because we always talk about saying no and blocking certain things, and we rarely talk about opening up and saying, I need support with this from the people you trust and love. And then also physical health issues, blood pressure, excuse me, blood pressure raising on you. Maybe you stopped working out. I got sick with the flu last month and it stopped me from working out. Well, that caused me some emotional distress because I love working out and it really helps me manage my own anxiety. And so it could be a lot of things that are triggered by your persistent emotional distress. Some people even develop hives, some people develop frequent headaches, or they'll even say this is to the point where it's a migraine. So now you're looking at increased prescription costs to manage those migraines. Now you're looking at increased trips to the medical professionals to figure out what's going on. And here's a hint: sometimes when people go to the ER, they're told, this is anxiety. I know you're having these symptoms that are manifesting themselves physically. However, this is anxiety because we've checked your blood pressure, we've checked your heart rate, we've checked your blood even, right? We've checked your urine sample and you seem fine. So what's going on in your life that's stressing you out? Has anyone ever had that happen? Let us know in the comment section. And again, this is a safe space. And so thoughts of self-harm are another sign that you might need therapy. And when I say thoughts of self-harm, it could be any thought you're having about harming yourself or ending your life. And it could also just be, it's not to the extreme where you think this is how I would do it, but it could be that thought that just passes so quickly. And when I was first diagnosed with depression in undergrad, this was decades ago, that was what was happening for me. And it took me years and years, even after becoming a therapist, to identify, oh, I was having some fleeting thoughts, end of life thoughts. What if I weren't here anymore? I wouldn't have all of this stress anymore. Well, that's a suicidal thought. That's a suicidal ideation. It's what we consider that. And so I want to make sure that no one's dismissing these thoughts. If you're having the existential thoughts, well, what happens when my life ends? Or, well, what were to happen? I just saw an accident. What if that were me? That's a suicidal ideation aligned thought. And that you need some therapy to help you organize those thoughts and understand where are they stemming from. So the business impact of not seeking therapy, it's big. Reduce productivity. Maybe you have difficulty concentrating, and that will also lead to increased errors. Let me know in the comment section if you've ever made an error in your business. I'll raise my hand first, right? I'll go back and look at my QuickBooks from the previous month just to make sure that I reconcile things correctly. And then I'll see, oh, wow, I labeled that under here when that actually was a business gift, or that actually was software. Why did I label it that way? And so it's not just, oh, I just made a mistake. I'm human. I can forgive myself, of course. What was going on when I reconciled those books? Oh, last month was very stressful for me. So it's leading to some errors, right? Or maybe there's some client fulfillment or in orders that you got wrong. And so you're starting to get emails and people are saying, hey, I didn't order this, but you included this and not the thing that I actually ordered. And you're thinking, what is going on with me? Could be that persistent emotional distress coming in here. And then also lack of motivation, missing those deadlines. It's challenging being a business owner because a lot of us are doing everything on our own. And sometimes we outsource. However, I understand the funds have to be there to outsource, right? So when that stress is just creeping up on us, sometimes it really tackles our motivation. And that, in fact, is going to impact how much we're able to achieve, whether or not we're going to hit those deadlines. Relationship challenges, maybe you're more irritable and you're withdrawing a lot, you're pulling away from people. Again, back to that example of not showing up online to market, not showing up at those networking events in person. Maybe part of your job role is to reach out to companies and share, this is how I can support your employees. But you're so irritable, you don't even feel comfortable doing that because you know that that's not really you. Sometimes people will attribute it to stress, and sometimes people won't. They'll say, "Oh, I'm just getting older. My personality is changing." Well, it could, but you're likely dealing with some persistent emotional distress that has not been uncovered for you yet. Or maybe you're feeling it, but you haven't brought it to the surface on a mental level with that awareness. And then also difficulty collaborating with clients and business partners. Maybe you have a business partner, and I'm actually curious to know in the comment section, does anyone who's on right now, does anyone have a business partner that they work with? And have you noticed that stress really impacts whether or not you're getting along, whether or not you're collaborating well? All of these things can be impacted by high stress levels. And then the business threats are maybe you're just not showing up the way you used to. Maybe you have that business partner and you have a standing meeting every Monday, but you stop showing up. Maybe you have those networking events and you stop showing up and your colleagues are saying, hey, we thought you would be here. You used to be here. What's going on? And you don't feel comfortable sharing because who wants to let someone else know that they're struggling in business? Not a lot of times, right? Everyone wants to put on this face. Yes, I'm doing great in business. Nope, the economy's not impacting my business at all. I got lots of sales. I got lots of clientele coming in. But really, that emotional distress is increasing so much that you're just not showing up. And so you can't get the clients to come in because you can't put yourself out there to represent the business. And then, of course, decreased creativity and innovation. This is the one that stands out to be the most because I didn't used to see myself as a creative person. And then once I started online marketing, I'm like, whoa, I was way more creative than I thought. That innovation is very low for me when my stressors are high. So let me know in the comment section if you experience that too. If you know that you're dealing with some persistent emotional distress and you notice that your creativity and ability to have innovative ideas, it's just low right now. And we'll be talking about these things too. If you put some comments there, we won't just leave them. We will address your comments. So taking the first step, finding the right therapist. Anxiety and depression is huge. A lot of people, I think it's over 40 million United States residents experience anxiety at some point in their lives. I think that's about 17% of the population. So the first step is identifying what the needs are. Because sometimes people will say, I think you need to go to a therapist, to that friend or family member who's kind of venting. But that person will say, well, for what? I can talk to you. I could just call you up. Why do I need a therapist? You always pick up because their boundaries might be a little off if they're always picking up, right? Um, but identifying what the need is so important. It sounds like a basic step, and it's really not. Are you dealing with anxiety and depression, which anxiety specifically 17% of the population is dealing with, right? Are you dealing with relationship concerns? Is that going to be the main focal point of therapy? Is it generational trauma? And you may not identify it initially as generational trauma. It may just seem like I just have anxiety and depression. And you'll see how I'm going down the list here. I just have some anxiety and I feel like I'm depressed. But then it's also impacting your business and personal relationships. But then at the core of it is some generational trauma that was unresolved because you didn't get your needs met in childhood. So now it's showing up in adulthood as anxiety and depression because it couldn't show up like that as a kid. You were told to just be quiet, just deal with it, stay in a kid's place, right? So really stopping to pause in your life, take some deep breaths and recognize what is the need here is the first step. Because then once you know the need, you can move to the next step, which is to research your options. Maybe you go and look at your insurance provider. Maybe you look at an online directory or even an EAP service that your employer offers. These are all great options for you to consider when you're starting to find a therapist. A good question to ask yourself is, do I want to pay like a copay, or am I open to paying like someone's full rate, which is called fee for service, and that's with private pay providers. So that second one is my online directory is for private pay providers who don't accept insurance. So they charge more out of pocket. However, they're able to manage people's care in a different way. So you may have insurance, right? I'll just use United Healthcare for an example. Let's say you have United Healthcare insurance and you would only pay $35 to see a therapist. You're like, great, I can see a therapist for $35. You may go to their online directory, or you may go to a different online directory and kind of narrow it down. Because so many providers accept insurance, it's going to be a hard time trying to filter all those therapists down. If you decide, however, you know what? I know that insurance requires a diagnosis. I don't want a diagnosis on file for whatever reason. Some military personnel do not want a diagnosis on file. That could get them kicked out of the military, right? So they might seek a private paid therapist where they know it's not going to be documented somewhere. And so that would be the benefit of seeing someone who doesn't accept your insurance, that you can keep that diagnosis to yourself. Or maybe that provider says, we're just talking, we're just working on the issues. We're not doing any formal diagnosing here, because an insurance provider is going to be looking for updates, dictating what type of therapy you can receive, how many sessions you can have per year, per quarter, however your insurance plan does it. So, and then the employee assistance programs can be very helpful if your employer offers that, because they will typically do it per issue. So if you say, you know what, on the left side, I've identified the need. It's definitely anxiety and depression that could be coming from some generational trauma. It is impacting my relationships. Which one is impacting me more? Well, my anxiety is so high that it's hard for me to even think about the things I'm depressed about, right? So you might go to that EAP program and submit a request to see a therapist for anxiety specifically. And then I think they give you about 6 to 10 sessions, something like that. This is what I hear, right? Because I don't accept EAP, so I don't know the specifics, and every plan is different, of course. But maybe they'll work with you for those 6 to 10 sessions on anxiety specifically. And then after that, you're like, okay, my anxiety is managed. I don't feel so on edge all the time. I still feel depressed though. Okay, maybe now you can go to that EAP and submit a new request to work on the depression. So that would be, an approach that might take you longer to get your needs met. However, if your employer is offering it, go for that route. Start there so you can pay the least amount of money if that's important to you. And then considering different therapy approaches. So we've talked about identifying the needs, and we've talked about where you go. So you have the need, and then you can go to an online directory. You can go through your insurance company's directory. You can also go through your employer and see if they have an EAP program. So, but here's the piece that people often aren't so educated about in the public, which is why I'm really happy that we're having this webinar today. There are so many different types of therapy approaches. Some of them I don't even know. I graduated with my master's back in 2011, and I started practicing in 2010 as an unlicensed psychotherapist at the time, because Colorado allowed that credential or that licensing credential. So I've been at this a long time, and still to this day I hear a new modality and I'm like, when did this one come on the market? I have never heard of this. I've got to go study this. So cognitive behavioral therapy, that first one, it addresses your unhealthy ways of thinking. We call these your negative cognitions. If you're having a lot of negative thoughts, like my business will never grow, my partner and I will never get to a healthy place. Well, that's a negative cognition. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches you some strategies to challenge that negative thought, reframe it, replace it with something more productive. This isn't about, oh, you want me to go from negative to toxic positivity. No, it's about, is that a productive thought for you? For you to think that your business will never grow. Is that productive? Absolutely not. It won't get you anywhere positive. So cognitive behavioral therapy says, well, we have a whole bunch of strategies that will help you with all of those negative cognitions. And then another approach is psychodynamic therapy, which is one I've been practicing since grad school. It really focuses on resolving the unconscious conflicts. I talked to a therapist recently who said, oh, I don't go all the way back. And that's exactly how this person said it. I don't go all the way back to childhood. We don't need to go there. Well, that's because that therapist is more solution focused. If you go to a therapist who practices psychodynamic therapy, they're going to hear your present concerns. And with your permission, they're going to say, can we go backwards a little bit to talk about your childhood? I'm wondering if there was some themes, because you mentioned your mom owned a business when you were a kid and your dad worked a full-time job, but your mom was always complaining about owning the business, and she was always worried about how she was going to pay her employees. I wonder if you picked up some of that unconsciously, subconsciously from your childhood, and maybe you're carrying some of that over today. Or maybe present day, your mom is giving you negative feedback about your business. Oh, back in my day, I struggled so much to pay my employees. I don't even know why you're hiring another one. What if you don't have the funds coming in? What if you lose that contract, right? So I love psychodynamic therapy because we really get to rewind a little bit, and we don't need to even stay there long in therapy, but we just enough to get a snapshot of what you were exposed to see how is that present today. And then we get to talk about how you get to write a new narrative. I don't have that one on here, but narrative therapy is all about what's the new narrative? Because we've been living from this narrative that you cannot be a successful business owner. Now that we've uncovered some things and you've done the work and you've got some healing, what's the new narrative? You get to write a new one. So, and then some advanced trauma modalities specifically are ART. You may have heard of EMDR. It's really popular. And then brain spotting. ART is one that I'm trained in. It stands for accelerated resolution therapy. And that's where we're addressing the trauma patterns in the brain. And we're looking at memory recall. We're having the client recall the memory, the traumatic memory. And it could even be for everyday basic challenges too, like anxiety or any other type of stressor. But we're looking at recalling the memory, and we're doing voluntary memory replacement through the process of eye movement with the hand. So the practitioner is moving their hands back and forth, and you're moving your eyes back and forth, and then you're recalling that memory, and there's a reprocessing that's going on. EMDR, I'm not trained in it, so I won't speak long on that. I have been a participant on the client side with EMDR, and they can use, I don't know what they're called, but they would put some buttons in your hand, and those buttons would beep from left to right hand for so many times while you're processing a thought with a practitioner. That one's also highly effective. And just in case anyone isn't familiar with EMDR, it stands for eye movement, desensitization, and regulation. Oh, and reprocessing, not regulation, excuse me. And then brain spotting, completely unfamiliar with it, have never been trained in it. Again, that's an advanced modality that you have to go pay to get trained on. So I know less about that one. How also I hear that it's highly effective as well. And then art therapy, I put that in here because Novo tends to attract a variety of business owners in so many different fields, and I love that. And I think art therapy gets less of a push in the therapeutic space, but there's a master's in art therapy that people can get, right? And it's incorporating those creative methods of expression through visual art. And so maybe you don't have a therapy business like myself. Maybe you actually physically paint art, right? Maybe that's your business. And so you go to a therapist, and that therapist is trying to do cognitive behavioral therapy with you, and it's not working. Well, you're a creative being, right? You may benefit from art therapy. Or maybe your business is really incorporating AI. I've seen a lot of people in the Novo community talk about their AI based businesses. And maybe for you, art therapy would really be helpful. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that we were going to talk about nurturing your well being while you wait. It's one thing to decide, here are my needs. I'm dealing with anxiety, depression, trauma, relationship concerns. My business is struggling. Here's where I'm going to start. I'm going to look at my insurance company first, talk to my employer. I'm going to see how long the wait is for an EAP provider for me to start with my first issue, or I'm shifting out these online directories. Gosh, there's 40 plus pages on some of these directories. Mine is not there yet. The Find My Therapist directory. We don't have enough providers that have that many pages. However, some directories online do have 40 plus pages when you put in your zip code. So it's important that you narrow it down by the need, by the type of therapy that we talked about on that previous screen. Maybe it's ART, maybe it's cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe it's narrative. Or maybe you want someone that's solution focused that says, we're going to talk about the here and now. Here's where we are. We're going to move you forward. We're not going backwards, right? It's so important to know those things so you can narrow it down in the directory. So you're not combing through 40 plus pages of providers. But remember that the more you narrow it down in using those filters on any directory, the better chance you have at getting a smaller amount of providers that you can easily review versus 40 plus pages, because that is overwhelming. And then even after you've done that, sometimes people don't take action and reach out to the provider, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I got very overwhelmed just trying to find the provider, just calling up my company's EAP and looking on these directories. So maybe you take a little longer to actually reach out. Or maybe you're the person that reaches out and then your therapist says, yeah, I'd love to work with you. My next opening is not until next month. And you're thinking that's 4 weeks away. What do I do now? Because usually when people find out that when they realize they're ready to start therapy, they are ready to start today. So let's talk a little bit about nurturing your well-being while you wait. Mindfulness techniques are so helpful. If you are a person who practices meditation, yoga, or any form of deep breathing, that's going to help center your body, calm your nervous system, and keep you regulated. The deep breathing exercise that I love to do is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. And that's where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you release it for 8 seconds. The goal is to do that up to 8 times. And I finally reached that 8 times. For years, I had just been stuck at, I do it 4 times and that's enough for me. So whatever works for you, go for it. However, the more you regulate that nervous system, the more mental energy you have to focus on the search or to wait it out if your provider if it takes a long time to get in with that provider. And then yoga, I did a yoga class yesterday, and there's a meditative component to yoga, and it was just so relaxing. You're suspending whatever the stressors are in your mind because you're focused on these very intentional movements. You're focused on releasing whatever that stress is. And hopefully by the end of those classes, you're you're more relaxed, right? You're ready for the day. Support groups, whatever this looks like for you, connecting with other people who understand is so helpful. I joined a book club at the end of last year. That's been helpful with connecting with people. Maybe for you, you're tapping into Novo's business connect meetings where you're networking with other people and they're putting you into smaller groups in those rooms and you're connecting with people who are having similar struggles in business. Maybe it's not a business related networking group. Maybe it's just like people in your community who say, we recognize that loneliness is on the rise. And so we meet up every Tuesday to have brunch. Maybe you go to that. So the point is connecting with some support groups can be helpful. And someone may be thinking, well, aren't there therapy support groups? There are. So if in the meantime, before you go to therapy, you find out about a grief therapy group or anxiety or depression, those are really good ways to pay less to participate, right? And then be with like a group of no more than 5 people who are all struggling with the same thing, and you're all signing those disclosures that you won't repeat what's being said in the group. So there's some safety built into those groups as well. And then self-care practices, whatever you do to prioritize your mental and emotional well-being and your physical well-being. For me, that's exercise. For me, that is saying no. For me, that's ignoring phone calls. And I even tell people this so I don't feel bad about it. Friends will say, I called you the other day. And I said, oh yeah, it's on my to-do list to call you back. At that point, I was not in the space to talk, so I didn't answer. But that prioritized my mental and emotional well-being at that time, right? So whatever that self-care practice looks like for you, lean into it during that wait. And then of course I wanted to put some alternative treatments in here too, because I know for me, these have been so helpful. The only thing on this list under alternative treatments that I have not ever tried is, well, I have tried acupuncture. Let me not say that. I have tried a little bit of acupuncture on my hand and I decided it wasn't for me. So I have tried it. Look at that. But massage therapy, maybe you say, well, Marquita, massages are so expensive in my area. Google a massage school. It'll be the best thing you can do for yourself. Last week alone, I had 2 massages. Each massage was $10 because their massage students are nearing graduation. So they sent out a text. Make sure you sign up, right? For their email blast or their text blast. And they said our students need more hands-on experience before they take their finals because they're nearing graduation. We have these appointments this Wednesday and Friday for $10. What do you think I did? I had 2 massages last week and I paid $20, right? So that plus nutrition therapy, I've been meeting with a registered dietitian. There's a mental health component to that too. Oftentimes you're talking about some of your eating and feeding habits from childhood and how that's impacting you today. Maybe you can work on some other goals by, really leaning into those alternative treatments. If acupuncture and chiropractic care is your thing, do that too. Whatever it takes to nurture your well-being while you wait, go for it. I support it. And then I'll just ask here, if there are any alternative treatments that you really dive into, let us know in the comment section. I actually want to know, what are people doing either now, or what do you plan on doing while you wait before you find a therapist? So some key takeaways are to prioritize your mental health. It's so important. It impacts you personally and professionally. Understand the broader impact. This isn't just about the here and now. This is about, how does it impact me as a person, as a business owner, 2 quarters from now, 1 year from now. So really investing in and prioritizing your mental health. It's the gift that keeps on giving for years to come. Take action, explore your options, and then remember that the evidence-based treatments do work, such as that cognitive behavioral therapy, accelerated resolution therapy, brain spotting, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. These are all treatments that have been heavily researched, so they work. So consider those. Here's how you can keep up with me if you are interested in continuing to follow my journey as a business owner. And just, I post a lot about mental health insights. So, you can reach out to me. And if you had any feedback after this webinar, you can email me at hello@marquitamyrick.com. And yeah, I'd love to connect with you offline as well. Let's talk a little bit about Novo now, because Novo is one thing that helps me manage my stressors. It helps me nurture my well-being. I hear so many stories, especially in the therapist groups, where people share that they're stressed out with their business finances and they just don't know where to go. And they're like, I'm looking for a new banking platform. I just have no clue. I kid you not. I am not I am not joking you right now. In the therapy groups, the number one banking platform that I see people talking about is Novo. And by the time I can get in to comment, I'm like number 8. So I'm like, well, I can't second or third it anymore, because someone's already done that. But a lot of people use Novo as their online banking platform. Some of those features are that they have no monthly fees and there's no minimal balance. So you could actually set up an account right after this webinar. You could even start now, but we want you to wait so you can attend the Q&A. And then there's a free invoicing tool that you can use. I've enjoyed using that for the coaching aspect of my business, because I keep that separate from my therapeutic work. And then there's a built-in budgeting tool known as reserves. I love using the reserves because I can save money for taxes. I can save money for my directory project. I also am a certified soul body bar instructor, so I save money for that in a separate reserve. So it's nice to be able to strategically move that money. And what Novo does is you are able to allocate a certain percentage based on when you get paid. So when you have those deposits coming in, so you don't even have to think about it. And then they have so many integrations. They have an integration with Stripe, QuickBooks, and there's one with Gusto too. I use Gusto for my payroll. So it's nice to see all of that in one place, so you don't have to keep logging out and into these different softwares that you use. Novo will integrate it in there for you. You do have to do the work to connect it, right? But isn't it nice to streamline things as a business owner? They also have AI powered bookkeeping, which is really helpful for people to categorize things. One of the second things I hear from therapists, specifically as business owners in private practice, is that they're struggling with their bookkeeping. And a lot of people at the end of the year say, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. I'm still paying on my taxes from last year. And now I just found out from my accountant that I'm going to owe for this year too. How stressful is that? And so with AI powered bookkeeping, it helps you categorize those things so you can get a better snapshot of your business's finances so that you're able to make decisions that are empowering and not ones that are setting you back in business. So I always stop to just see if Stephanie has anything to add in this section. Did you want to add anything, Stephanie, that I didn't share about Novo? I've been with Novo since 2020. Woo woo.
I feel like you covered so much, and just wanted to say thank you for taking the time. I think the other thing that I would like to add about Novo is just that there is this community where you can stay connected with Marquita. And I'm going to share a link here as well for how to stay in touch to get the replay. And we also have a new interactive hub where you guys can go and read up, you can listen in, you can tune into any of our past events that are there and sign up for some of the upcoming ones. So I'm going to share those links here in the chat. And
Yeah.
no, thank you, Marquita. You got it.
Yeah, of course. You know what? And I know I was one of the subject matter experts that recently asked in the Novo community, when is this going live? Can we share the links already? I was so eager. And I've been meaning to come in the group and post. And this is an actual experience because as the subject matter experts, we had earlier access to Novo's online community. And several of the new SMEs posted that they were in business with helping people, business owners, learn how to integrate AI into their business. And there were 2 of them specifically that said that they use AI to kind of brain dump all of their thoughts. And then they have AI categorize like how they should structure their day. I tried that a few weeks ago and it worked. And I thought, this is the benefit of having this community, because otherwise I'm not talking to a lot of people who are using AI. In fact, a lot of psychotherapists are afraid to use AI. They'll use it for note taking, but for other stuff, it's like, whoa, let me stay away from that. I don't know about it. And so I've been using it since since AI was released and became open to the public. But that one tip, I wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else, and I got that in the Novo community. And so there were a few Sundays ago where I just said, okay, all right, let me just go to AI. I'm going to take their tip. Here's what all I have to do today. And AI laid it all out so clearly, down to AI saying, hey, you likely have more energy at the beginning of your day today. So do these tasks first and then move to these tasks. I got to moving. I was clearing out business and personal tasks. So that's just one benefit of many of being in the Novo community. So if you're not in there, make sure you check it out. And then your free Novo account is just a click away, literally. scan this code. Or you can check out the link that I'm sure Stephanie has put in the chat box. I haven't been there since we started the webinar. And if you have any questions, you can also email community@novo.co. They're very responsive and so eager to help you get your Novo journey started. And then, of course, continuing the conversation, Novo has an alignable community group, a Facebook group, and I'm in both of those groups as well as Novo's online community on their platform. So this is how we continue the conversation, because it doesn't have to end here. We're not in business together. However, we can all support one another from afar. And again, sometimes support is you log into the community, you read someone's suggestion and you try it and you think that really worked for me. And you keep up with that practice like I did with that AI suggestion. Oh, I had this in here twice. So again, this is how you can contact me, and we're going to move into the Q&A section. So does anyone have any feedback, any questions? Do we have anything going on in the chat box? I'm coming back so I can check too. Thank you all for showing up today and just sharing this space with us and paying attention. I appreciate it. Looks like Stephanie was saying therapy to help organize thoughts and addressing the source definitely sounds helpful for freeing up energy and space to focus and create and connect. Absolutely. That's one thing one job I have is an organizer, a mental organizer for the people I work with. And so people will often come in therapy and say, I know I'm venting today. I'm probably putting too much on you. And I think you could add a few more if you like, my brain really likes to take all of this stuff in at the top of the funnel. And then how do we narrow it down to figure out what we need to focus on? And once we figure out like what's the source of all of those stressors that people have brought up, then we can start to kind of pick apart those different stressors. And that's the fun, creative part for me, because my brain sees it all mentally and visually. And so I think, okay, now that we got the source, we know what's impacting it. Let's break down how we start to navigate it so you can have some ease with this. So thank you for that comment, Stephanie. Oh, yes, always less isolating to realize the big picture of mental health being a human experience. To break the stigma, we have to recognize that it's a human experience. We are the only species that has the ability to practice metacognition, and that's where we can have a thought and we can analyze that thought. Animals can't do that. Dogs can't do that. Birds can't do that. So we have metacognition. We can have these thoughts and we analyze them, and that is why we are so stressed out in America, right? Because we can do both at the same time. And, internationally too, if you're on here, all of us as humans, we have this ability to practice metacognition unless there's a cognitive disorder at play. And it's a great ability because, people say, don't talk to you can talk to yourself, but don't answer yourself. It's an amazing ability. And it's also an ability that if we don't learn how to hone in and really structure for ourselves, it can stress us out. But the big point is that we're all having this human experience. We're not alone. It's all unique. Alexandria said, going for walks has always been therapeutic for me. I love that. I'm curious, Alexandria, do you do meditative walks? Because that was something I learned about years ago. And when I heard it, I thought, well, how are you meditating when you're walking? You keeping your eyes closed? But Dr. Joe Dispenza has YouTube videos on meditative walks and really not just walking to walk, but being very intentional, taking in the sensory aspect of walking. So yeah, curious to know if you do that. Oh, and Stephanie agreed. You do that too. Let's see. The recording. You did respond to the recording question. Thank you, Stephanie. You're so welcome, Christine. Thank you so much for attending today. Is anyone currently in therapy and it's going well for them? I hear a lot of different stories. I hear that people are in therapy and it's going well, or people are in therapy and it's not going well. And it's the people who are having a therapy experience that they don't want to have that are staying in the therapeutic relationship. And there can be a variety of reasons for that. But I'm curious to hear if anyone is in therapy and they're trying to figure out, how do I get out of therapy? Because during this presentation, I heard some things that helped me realize I'm not getting specifically what I need. And it doesn't have to be that you don't have a good therapist. Maybe you have a solution-focused therapist and you didn't realize that this is what solution focused is. We're not talking about my childhood. And maybe there's some resistance from the therapist to go backwards because that's not their therapeutic modality. And you need someone who practices more psychodynamic type therapy. So it's not always that this is a bad therapist here, right? It's we all choose a modality for very specific reasons. Because I had trauma in my childhood from bullying, I gravitated towards therapies that really put some emphasis on the childhood, healing that inner child, understanding what the unconscious motivation was for some of my adult present day behaviors. So that's why I gravitated towards psychodynamic therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, that one was more because I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at age 19. So someone telling me we're going to do narrative therapy to address your cognitive behavioral therapy symptoms would have never worked, because cognitive behavioral therapy is all about addressing the negative cognitions, and OCD is all about obsessive thoughts that keep becoming more and more intrusive the longer someone goes without treatment. So I needed a specific type of therapy to address the OCD symptoms. So yeah, it doesn't have to be that your therapist is not a good therapist. They're just not trained in the modality that you actually need for your challenges. Alexandria asks, are there any tips for finding a therapist that aligns with your needs? For instance, should you look for a therapist who understands your specific culture or who is familiar with your professional industry? This is an amazing question, Alexandria. Thank you. And so with this one, historically, I've heard people say that they have to have a therapist who shares their specific culture. And if you are the person who says, oh, I got to have someone who, had a very similar experience to mine, then please, by all means, seek out a therapist who looks like you, who has the cultural perspective that you have. Maybe you share a similar background ethnically. So if that's the case, by all means, go for it. I will say that within our degrees, we do have to take multicultural counseling, and there are cultural competencies that we have to pass on exams, which means we have to study it. We have to put ourselves in situations that expose us to different traditions. I myself am Christian. I went to a Wiccan ceremony during graduate school and stood in the background and just observed, right? I'm not Wiccan. However, we're studying religion in society and how this plays into the cultural aspect. Well, then I'm going to the Catholic Church, even though I'm not Catholic, right? I'm immersing myself in different experiences to understand more of how they live and why they live that way. So that when I'm in the therapy room and says, hey, I'm Catholic, I noticed that you're not. Are we going to be okay? Absolutely, because I'm welcoming to all people and because diversity is important to me, right? So the bigger question is, let's say you narrow down, you do some of the things we talked about in the webinar, and you narrow it down to 3 therapists, and you say, okay, I'm going to start reaching out to schedule these consultations. Let's say only one of those, let's say 2 of those therapists identify the same way you do in the world, but the other one doesn't. You could be surprised by talking to the one who doesn't and doing a consultation, because maybe they studied in an area similar to where you grew up, right? Or maybe someone in their family is from a different culture, and so they've been immersed in it already. Maybe they just have the book knowledge, but they did a really good job and they're applying their knowledge very well in engaging with you. And you think, wow, even though I like these other therapists because we have similar ethnic backgrounds, for some reason I'm feeling a pull towards this one because our personalities match. Even though ethnically we're different, culturally we're different, something about these personalities and the way this person got me, I felt very heard. So I always say, like, if you're the person who says I absolutely have to have this type of therapist, go there. No, I have no feelings about it negatively. And if you're a person who's more open and you're like, I really got to feel the connection, then spread it out and open yourself up to other people who may not share a similar culture. And then professional industry, that can be important too. In particular, in my practice, I work with other psychotherapists, which is an actual niche because not every therapist can work with another psychotherapist. Even in my infancy in my career, right? I've been doing this for 15 years. In the beginning, no, I could not work with another therapist because instead of being able to focus on that other therapist, I'm thinking, is this person thinking I don't know how to execute this modality well? Are they judging my skill set, right? I don't have those thoughts now, so I can work very well with other therapists. I also have a group of mental health professionals who are nurses, psychiatrists in my practice, right? So if that person doesn't understand your industry, that could impact things. So asking if they have any experience working with people in your industry is so important, because you don't want to have to explain everything. That's the other thing. And that also goes with being from a specific culture. You don't want to get in the business of being on the other side as the therapy client and your therapist doesn't understand even on a basic level. So you find yourself explaining, well, this is why we do this in my culture. Well, this is why we do that. And you're just exhausted at this point, right? Because you're educating and you're not receiving the therapy. That again, that's why the consultation is so important, because you can get a feel for whether or not they can really handle your concerns, whether or not they do have any experience or expertise in treating people from your culture. You're going to get it in the consultation, especially if you ask the right questions. So thank you again for that question, Alexandria. I know there was a long answer. I explained this funnel that I get in my head visually to you all. So I can be a little long-winded with my responses, and it's really because I want to be thorough. Do we have any other questions from anyone? Oh, we're up to 12 people. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. I just love this talk about the mental health stigma, though. It's something so important that we continue to address amongst all cultures, across all cultures rather, because there's still a stigma with mental health. We still have people saying, oh, I can't go to therapy. So it's important that we normalize this. And I don't know if I've quite said it today. I'm in therapy as a therapist. I met with my therapist yesterday at 1 p.m. So once a month, I meet with my therapist. I'm open about that online, about normalizing mental health. And you'll notice that I also shared some things that I've been diagnosed with. That's a part of breaking the stigma too. Let's see. Alexandria said, thank you for the insights. To answer your walking question, I usually do one of three things, depending on my mood and reason for walking. Alexandria is educating us here. 1, talk on the phone with a friend to vent and release the energy. Love that. 2, listen to music or keep my headphones to keep others from bothering me and just be silent with my thoughts. I love that too. Headphones are my strategy for the grocery store specifically, because I am a people magnet. So, and then 3, I will record a video or voice memo giving a broad description of why I'm walking with a few solutions or thoughts on how things could be different. I like all of those. I really like number 3. Number 3 is something I hadn't even considered, Alexandria. To record a video or voice memo giving a broad description of why you're walking. And then you not only do that, you come up with solutions. Let us know if you're going to be trying that in the comments. Because again, this is why community is important. This like mimics what I was sharing about the Novo community online, because you pick up something that you can take. So even though I can't go to lunch with Alexandria to connect, I picked up something from her that I'm not going to forget and I'm going to use on my next walk. And that's going to enhance my life experience as a human in general, personally and professionally. So thank you for being willing to share those points with us, Alexandria. And I see that Stephanie put the link to register for the next session. So the next webinar that I'm co-hosting with Novo is the mental load of being your own boss. And that's where we talk about all of the stressors that we experience as business owners. We dive a little more into the diagnoses in that one, just in case you're like, I wanted a little bit more of that. We talk about that load because we wear so many hats as business owners. And sometimes we don't know when to take them off. And I've definitely been there. And my kids definitely check me on it still at times. You've been up here. I wish I had it on my desk. This past Sunday, I'm launching my podcast next month. So I was working on the outro, recording it. I know, right? That's exciting. And I heard a knock at the door and my son was trying to slip a piece of paper under it, but it wasn't going. So I said, let me just open the door. The paper said, when will we make curry? Because I had told him when I'm done upstairs, I will come down, I'm going to grab a bite to eat, and then we're going to start prepping to make massaman curry. So it's little reminders like that I need to, okay, take off the podcaster hat, put it to the side. Now you're just mommy. Take yourself downstairs. But I needed that reminder, right? And so, but there again, there's this mental load of being your own boss. In my head, I got to get this done. I want this outro recorded today, stat, and I need it edited. So I got that done, and then we also made the massaman curry, and him and my daughter are excellent chefs, so it came out great. Just in case anyone's wondering. I see Stephanie typing something here. I love how it shows you when someone's typing. That's pretty cool. Does anyone else have any other questions? You love massaman curry. Oh, it's so good, isn't it? And we made vegan massaman curry, so we used a different recipe. It was so good. Alexandria says, thank you. I'm glad I could help. Absolutely. Hey, we are both in Florida. Let's stay connected, and maybe lunch may happen one day. Let's do it, Alexandria. I would love that. And even if I think you said you're in Orlando, so that's about 90 minutes away from where I'm at, but even a virtual meetup, but I also don't mind driving. It's another thing. You can connect online or in person. It's so helpful to connect with other people, especially if you are in business by yourself. I do not have a business partner, even though my husband is sometimes my technical person when my laptop is not acting right. So it's just nice to stay connected. And we're highlighting again one of the slides we talked about finding support groups. It doesn't have to be a group of more than 2 people. It could just be other people you connect with. So yeah. Doesn't look like we have any more questions here. If you come up with any, feel free to email me using hello@marquitamyrick.com. Connect on social and check out my website. Maybe there's some collaborating that could occur. Who knows? Otherwise, I've really enjoyed presenting this webinar to you all today, and we would love your feedback because this is my first time presenting this specific webinar. This is a new one in the mix, so hopefully you all enjoyed it and found some value.
Thank you so much, Marquita. Thank you, all of you, for joining in. Again, we shared a lot of links in the chat for y'all, different options, whether it's resources, ways to stay connected with Marquita, and ways that we can really have you join the Novo community in a way that you can continue to learn from, connect, and grow your business. So again, wanted to say thank you. And if anyone is with Novo, please go ahead and say hey. We'd love to see who's in the community already. For now, I just want to, let's see, Alexandria, thank you for today. It's super helpful. Okay, yes, have a great day, everyone. Just want to close us out on a positive note and remind you to utilize some of those links. Don't hesitate to connect with Marquita and one of those several ways. I know she's also on, I think, LinkedIn and okay. So and we stuck with Instagram primarily here, but there's other ways. Definitely through email. Keep the conversation going. And if we just see you in the next event, that'll be awesome too. If you have any questions about Novo, do let us know too. I shared the link to connect and join the groups, but also if you're interested in the financial platform specifically, we're going to be hosting more events around how to utilize that. So any questions that you have about how it may work for you or what your needs are as a business owner, would love to start feeling those for you as well. And in the meantime,
amazingness, Stephanie.
Awesome.
We really appreciate you.
And I also wanted to shout out the other creators too. When you go to look on that in that Novo community site, you'll see some other events. And Marquita touched on some of the other topics we have, like automation and how to utilize AI. We've got some really helpful strategies on marketing coming out, from video to online presence, some speaking and leadership guidance as well. Just whatever you may need. Obviously you don't need all of it. As Marquita said, it's just opportunities to gain and build bit by bit, as we're all doing. You're not alone in that process. And so as we can progress together, wanted to make sure you all are aware of all the different conversations that you have access to through the Novo community.
Yes, definitely check those out. You'll probably see my name in some of the upcoming webinars. I'm really excited, in particular for the one on speaking, automations, and then anytime, I think his name is Ryan, hosts the one about podcasting. Oh my gosh, his energy is so live. I love it. And yeah, part of why I took action on starting my podcast was attending his webinar. So you never know, you're attending one of these things and you're like, okay, I'm going to find a therapist today, or you know what, I'm starting that podcast, or yep, I'm going to incorporate automation. So yeah, these webinars are to motivate you to take action too. So hopefully we see you all at some of the upcoming webinars.
Yes. All right. Well, given that, we're going to close out officially. I'm going to end the stream and wish you all a great rest of your week. See you next time, hopefully very soon.
Yes. Bye everyone. Thank you for your time and enjoy your weekend.
All right.